I came across some numbers with McDonald's, and this is relevant because McDonald's recently said no to buying Bitcoin. So if we take a look at how much, if we look at some of the information for McDonald's, let's say we look at their total real estate value. So McDonald's is, I think I've read multiple people saying this. Their like we can even see it here. Their biggest moneymaker isn't their burgers. Their biggest moneymaker is owning real estate, so owning land, owning property, and renting that out to people. So I think that's actually a problem because the fiat world kind of takes every company into that direction. But then something else that I noticed is, so we see here, McDonald's owns $42 billion worth of real estate. I looked at their balance sheet. They have land and improvements of about 7.2 billion, and then they have buildings and improvements of 34 billion. So this works out to be about the same number. But then if we look at MicroStrategy, we can see here that MicroStrategy owns 531,000 Bitcoin, which is worth $44 billion. So $42 billion for McDonald's real estate, while MicroStrategy owns $44 billion worth of Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, what's their MNAV, right? Everybody talks about the MNAV of strategy. If you look at the multiple on McDonald's of their real estate holdings, their market cap is 220 billion. So the people are putting a lot of value in not just the real estate holdings, but in the free cash flow. There's some of their money is made from their business model is interesting, right? And I think we should get into how it relates to strategy. Their business model, 40% of it or 38% of it comes from renting out the buildings and land that they have to their franchisees. And then the other part of their income is from the franchisees' fees on top of that for the amount of revenue that they make with the McDonald's brand and business. So if we look at strategy, what they've done is they've started to go into the digital asset, or Saylor's even talked about it being digital property, and he is acquiring this huge amount of Bitcoin as digital property, which will be built on in some way in the future, is kind of the concept here. And there's other business models of players in the Bitcoin space that are not acquiring the digital property. They're making the transaction fees. They are like the restaurant that is just making a little percentage, a margin from selling the burgers. They're making a margin from facilitating trades or something like this, right? So it's very good to look at these business models and see how strategy has actually more property than McDonald's does at a fraction of the market cap of McDonald's, which we might say McDonald's is from the past, right? They have historically a good business, but it's one of the past of physical real estate, of selling burgers, this kind of stuff. Strategy is looking into the future of seeing what this Bitcoin is going to be worth in the future.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, Forrest. I think that kind of the theme here is that McDonald's is still investing in the old world, and strategy is preparing for the new world. And the time we're in right now is most people still live in that old world where it's say, yeah, real estate, burgers, making profit. But not a whole lot of people have the foresight and the vision to see what's coming here. I think that's going to be the big differentiator here. But when you think about it this way, so we got 38% of McDonald's revenue is coming from its franchisee in the form of rental income. So it makes sense. And you might say, well, that probably isn't going to disappear because the franchises are going to be around. They're going to keep that money coming in. But I just see a huge shift happening in the world right now, not only from the old world to the new world in terms of like physical into digital, but I think the other part there too is like the actual fiat food, like the burgers, like the people are kind of moving away from that slowly here. And how I see McDonald's playing out over these next couple of years and maybe beyond that is, you might say, again, the 38% is going to be fairly consistent, but what happens when prices continue to increase? And if you look at who McDonald's main customers are, they are I would say, lower class for the most part. It's the people who can't afford to go buy a steak, can't afford to go to a nice restaurant. They're going to McDonald's. And we've seen the price of a Big Mac go from like $1 to $7. And that's not reversing. It's going to continue to go in that trend. And so I think that McDonald's is going to eventually price out its customers. I foresee that happening, not only because of the price increase, but because people are starting to realize how bad this food is for them. So as demand for McDonald's decreases, their franchisees are taking in less money and they're less able to pay McDonald's for the rent. So I don't know if it's a problem today, but I foresee it being a significant problem for them in the future.
I think there's other problems that follow from this. If the franchisees can't make their payments, then they have to basically extract wealth from their workers, right? Let's say they have a certain number of workers, they're paying the minimum wage. Let's say they have 10 workers on a shift and they can't afford those 10 workers because they have to pay their rental fees. Now they cut down one, they get 9 workers, and they put that work, the burden of all the work on 10% fewer employees. So what's happening here is essentially they're extracting wealth from their employees. I mean, it almost seems like it's not relevant. It almost seems like it doesn't even make any sense to make this comparison, but they're extracting wealth from their employees. And that's one of the only reasons why they're able to make money. So if McDonald's had to pay their employees a proper wage, if they had to have high quality ingredients in their food, would they actually survive, right? And then we see the other side of things. What if actually let's look at it for MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy owns 2.5% of the total Bitcoin supply. McDonald's, I just ran the numbers quickly before the show. So McDonald's owns about 0.0014% of the total real estate. So there's more competition there. Anybody could buy real estate. Anybody could buy a ton of real estate. Anybody could start a burger company. Anybody could start a rental business like McDonald's. They could start a franchise and they could rent it out to other people. But nobody can get to 2.5% Bitcoin. I genuinely don't think that anyone else in the world will ever get to 531,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah. Both of you guys are both talking a little bit about risk here. And when we're evaluating investments, we need to look at risk versus reward. And one thing that I'm thinking about here with McDonald's is not all real estate is the same. They might buy some real estate that ends up not appreciating in value or not returning well with their rental. If that business on top of it doesn't do well. Jor talked about how the trend is toward maybe healthier eating. If that trend continues, all of the real estate earnings, it has the risk of the restaurant business on top of it. The maybe wages increase too much, it becomes too expensive, right? They have to make the food even worse to keep the prices low, right? So there's all these risks on top of that. And real estate, again, is not fungible. So it is different. Every single piece of real estate is different and there's a huge acquisition costs as well. And it takes a lot of time. There's a whole team probably that needs to go figure out what places to buy to potentially put McDonald's on there. It takes years and years to do that. Whereas Saylor just bought $300 million of Bitcoin last week, right? And it's just an instant acquisition as soon as they have money, which they've raised with their financial products. And it's, it just makes so much more sense. It's so much more fast. And it just goes to show that strategy at such a small market cap compared to McDonald's already has more property than McDonald's. And percentage wise in its equivalent field is just so massive. And they haven't even started making any money or adding any sort of yield or revenue from their Bitcoin, right? So they haven't even gone the route yet that McDonald's is fully encased in, which is making money from their property. Strategy is just in the acquisition phase at this point. They've wrapped their Bitcoin in a few products, but down the line, we can't even imagine what kind of stuff that they can do with their Bitcoin to earn income, just like how McDonald's is earning income from their property.
I think we should just dive a little bit further into that, because I think that you mentioned that it's hard for them to find property. They need a whole team of people to do that. There's lots of costs involved with that, lots of time involved with that. But along the same sentence there is what happens when they have to sell it, right? So if something were to go south in one of their hundreds of thousands of locations, let's say that there's a mayor that comes into the city and is very business unfriendly, or taxes go way up in this place, or crime is way up in this area. So they have to sell that. They have to sell that. That was maybe once a good area of town or once a good location. They have to sell that. And they have to find a buyer for that, which can be very difficult under those circumstances.
And the fees.
So, and fees, yes. So if something happened the other way with Bitcoin, as you alluded to there, Forrest, you can buy it within 5 minutes, you can sell it within 5 minutes because of its liquidity. It's a global market with massive, very underappreciated aspect is the liquidity of Bitcoin. So when you're talking about risk of buying, selling, all that stuff, Bitcoin is by far the better play there.
I think if you also look at it from a different perspective, because of how McDonald's business works, because they probably can't make money just off their burgers, they have to do something else to make money. It's like when have you guys read the Bitcoin Standard?
Mm-hmm.
Where I think Saifedean says in the book, somewhere in the book, he says that. Oh, I have my copy here too. I think somewhere in the book, Saifedean says that we're more focused on on investing our money than we are in making money, or we basically have two jobs in a way. That's exactly what MicroStrategy, or that's exactly what McDonald's is doing.
Yes.
Right. So McDonald's has to constantly work on getting better properties. They have to constantly work on acquiring franchisees. They have to constantly work on convincing people to rent their properties. I mean, actually, it's probably easy for them because the franchisees can make a decent amount of money, but they have to constantly work on finding people to instead of improving their burgers, they have to constantly work on finding people to own to rent their property so that they can make money off of it. And it just completely it makes it so that there's a bigger industry when there doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Somebody could easily buy one property, sell the best burger in the world, and completely just destroy McDonald's business.
There's lots of sharks trying to take McDonald's business, but you
Yeah.
can't. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like Shake Shack, In-N-Out, all the there's other burger joints, and there's other franchises that people can buy into or can get involved with. And the thing with that is that's marginally going to increase maybe the value of McDonald's real estate holdings if there's more demand for optimal restaurant locations and there's people trying to compete for that. But with Bitcoin, if somebody tries to compete with the moat that Saylor has, it is drastically going to increase the price of Bitcoin and therefore the holdings, the property holdings of Strategy. So that's why Strategy is in part so open about their plan and so encouraging of other businesses, is because they benefit like crazy when anybody else adopts the same strategy that they're doing. That's not the case with McDonald's. It's really a cutthroat business. They have to compete against Subway, Wendy's, whatever, all the others, right?
Yeah, and if some competition does come in, I mean, they could easily get their brand could get damaged massively, right? If somebody starts putting out some if somebody funds some research on how bad their food is, if somebody starts talking about how the stuff that they're including in their food is terrible for our health, more and more people are going to want to stay away from McDonald's. And like we mentioned before, we did mention that before. I think that's going to happen. Right, it'll happen over time. That's the thing, right? Every business is bound to be disrupted. Even our stuff, the stuff that we're talking about, there's probably going to be some better Bitcoiner out there who makes better content than us. But the good thing is that we can, with the revenue that we make, with the money that we make from this work that we're doing, we can buy Bitcoin and nobody can disrupt that Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the whole reason why McDonald's has gone. If we looked at like the last 20 years of McDonald's balance sheets, I'm sure that 42 billion was once 42 million, and then 4.2 billion. And the reason why it's going up is not because the locations are somewhat better now than they were. They're probably worse, But the reason why it's gone up in value is because they've printed so many dollars. And I don't think that that should be understated either. The whole reason why this business model, and you know, I remember hearing that for the first time, that McDonald's is not a burger company, it's a real estate company. And I was like, oh, damn, that makes sense. And that's, you know, it's kind of like a darling statement. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. But as you guys alluded to there, they now have to manage two separate industries, the food industry, making people want their horrible food, and also maintaining their real estate. Those are two different, completely different industries that both have their own risks attached to them. And I think that as real estate, even though it's gone up in dollars, we know that it has actually dropped significantly in Bitcoin. And that trend isn't going to continue here. And I think that as more and more people understand Bitcoin and they see that maybe real estate is no longer the best store of value anymore, that starts shifting to Bitcoin. And as that happens, the McDonald's of the world, all the people who own real estate, not houses, but like rental homes, that's going to start flowing into Bitcoin. And when that happens, it's going to be a cascading effect where that money's all just going to flow into Bitcoin, which is going to make our net worth higher, Strategy's net worth higher, and anybody who's bought Bitcoin before that higher. So and it won't reverse. That's the part that I think we should understand. It won't reverse.
Yeah, it'll never come back. One thing that a lot of people will say in a response to this video, and I'm going to try to predict what people are going to say in the comments. So people are going to say that, you can't build a McDonald's inside of Bitcoin. Of course you can't, because Bitcoin isn't physical land. They both have their own uses. They both have their own utility. The thing about Bitcoin is that it separates utility from money. It separates utility from value storage. So until Bitcoin doesn't have these outsized returns anymore, I don't think there's a point of really trying to start a business. Because if Bitcoin can give you 50% returns, I just did a quick calculation on McDonald's returns over the last 5 years. So last 5 years were terrible, right? For inflation, they were absolutely insane. We had what, 9-10% inflation at one point. That was CPI, so the actual inflation was probably higher. If we look at the money printing, we know that a lot of money has been printed in the last 5 years. McDonald's, the stock has only gone up 67%.
Mm-hmm.
I think our cost of living has risen more than 67%, right? They also have their dividend, of course, but I mean, even then, if you pay a dividend, you're kind of getting rid of your company's future to pay your shareholders. You're sacrificing something you're liquidating your future potential, and you're giving it to your shareholders. Potentially, maybe it's because you don't think that you can innovate anymore. Maybe you're okay with getting rid of some of that cash. But I mean, I think it's just an incentive to get more people to invest in the company, right? And how's your incentive to invest in the company going to get people to invest in the company when you can't even pass Bitcoin's returns?
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say here that you kind of alluded to is that Bitcoin is the new hurdle rate. And what that is going to cause is companies to have to become super efficient. And if McDonald's is leaning on being a profitable business by extracting value out of the people that pay to become a franchisee by overcharging them for the land usage because they have no other option. They're not even allowed to open a McDonald's on some cheaper land that they could rent or something like that. Then that is a model that is extracting too much value and is raising the cost of everything involved. So it's just not a model that works in the future of people realizing how good of a store of value and how good of even just as an investment, Bitcoin could be. So that's going to have to get disrupted, and there'll have to be a more efficient, more streamlined, more profitable business model based off of what's actually being produced, value that's being produced, not just land that's being held and forcing people to rent it, basically, to get involved with the business.
Yeah, and if you take a drive down the road or any main street in a city, like the commercial real estate is not in a good place right now. It's just not the demand and the value that we've seen for the last couple decades is just not there anymore. There's a ton. Every block, there's 5 or 6 places for lease, because there's not enough people filling these. And that's what McDonald's entire balance sheet is built on. It's built on quicksand. Whereas
I was just about to say that there's so many places for lease everywhere. It's crazy.
Yes. And that's what it's based on, even though that is the value today in fiat. What's that really worth in terms of Bitcoin? It's
Yeah.
not that significant. And so when you think about McDonald's, don't think about strategy as if like they're going to be selling burgers. They're not. They're owning uh they're owning space in the cyberspace, I guess. And don't just think about Bitcoin as a number go up and it's fun and whatever else. Like this is a serious asset that countries are starting to realize is a matter of security, like of their national security. And so I don't think Saylor's going to be renting out the Bitcoin in the same kind of McDonald's model, but he's owning space or owning land in cyberspace that he knows the value is only going to go up. The demand is only going to increase as more and more people rely on the internet and rely on an encrypted way to communicate and transact and transfer value across the world. Bitcoin is the value there. It's not burgers. It's not a product. Bitcoin is the product there. And that's what strategy's holding. So to me, McDonald's. So I guess, unless you guys have much more to add to this, do you guys think that it would be a wise idea for McDonald's to diversify and to get into Bitcoin? And what would that look like?
I mean, they'd make more returns from their Bitcoin than they do from their real estate. So I don't get why not, right? If you think about it, so I was looking at the stuff that we were looking at before. So they earned $7.3 billion in rental income from their real estate holdings in 2023. It was 63% of the revenue generated from franchisees. So think about how much work they'd have to do to get that $7.3 billion. Right. So in 2023, they had, let me look at the numbers here. So they had 6.6. So they had about $38 billion worth of real estate. So if we look at the numbers, so 30, what's 7.3 divided by 8, or 7.3 divided by 38. So 7.3 divided by 38. So with their rental income, they made 19%. So their rental income was 19% of their total holding. So their return on investment was essentially 19%. If they had held Bitcoin in 2023, what would their return have been? Right. And once you look at it from that perspective, it doesn't really make any sense honestly, it doesn't make any sense to hold real estate anymore. The people who hold real estate, I think they just don't understand Bitcoin. They don't understand that their total return by literally just holding Bitcoin and doing nothing else, they could just forget about it. They could live their lives. They could do whatever they want to instead of holding land and real estate. They'd make better returns. And I think this is going to spread. This knowledge is going to spread. There's no way it's not.
Yeah, their real estate holdings are going to zero against Bitcoin. That's definitely true. I think that buying Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, acquiring Bitcoin, even with their revenue that they make, is too much of a deviation from what their current business model is, and from probably what their investors are interested in. A lot of the McDonald's stock is in a lot of income funds, a lot of dividend funds. It's kind of an older asset class in that way, where you might buy it to just like a dividend growth company or something like that, right? It's in all of these kind of funds, and to put Bitcoin in there, they might have to it might be more difficult for them to pay out that dividend, right? What percentage of their revenue is being paid out to that dividend? So to switch that up, I think they're not the right company to do so. They obviously should do it, but I think that it's too much of a leap for them currently.
Yeah, I clearly, obviously, if they've talked about it, they've discussed it. I don't think that if they understood it, they would be going in this direction. But I do think that they should start, and I think the GameStop is probably going to take the same approach of like looking at each one of their locations separately, figuring out which ones are profitable, which ones aren't, sell, buy some Bitcoin for that. And then at least you start rebuilding your balance sheet with a solid foundation. I think that that's the main point here. And I think that as McDonald's continues to go in that same direction of, if I was the CEO of McDonald's right now, I would say like I said, we're going to dump some of our less profitable locations. We're going to start buying Bitcoin. We're going to change our business model strategy, our strategy to be less bad, I guess. I don't think that McDonald's is ever going to become like the keg or anything like that. But I think if they made a push in the Bitcoin direction and they made a push in like getting rid of some of the seed oils, I think that would actually spark more interest and drive demand up for them. I think that that's what every company is going to default to here is they're going to get rid of they're going to have to trim the fat and buy some Bitcoin. And there's not a whole lot of Bitcoin to go around. But the last thing that I wanted to say here is, Rajat, what did you say was the market cap of McDonald's right now?
It's at
220.
220 billion.
220. So what's that like in MNAV terms, in strategy terms? That seems like a lot.
If you just see I don't know if it would work that way, because with real estate, you can generate cash flow. With Bitcoin, you can't, right? So
Right.
I think that's what people look at, and people look at the steady growth, and it's all about, they just want stability, right? Most people just want stability in their portfolio. So they're willing to put a lot more money into McDonald's. But then the other side of things is that there's a lot of passive flows going into McDonald's, and that bumps
Yeah.
up the market cap.
The
people
premium.
just see People just see McDonald's as a company that's going to keep giving them cash flow. It's going to keep going up in value forever. Like, and even that's speculative, right? I mean, I would even go as far as to say that real estate is speculative, because you don't know if the land that you have is going to be demanded in the future, right? What if people don't
Yeah.
want to live in the area? That, like, something could happen overnight that completely changes how you want things to go, right? Let's say, if let's say actually, I was gonna say, I was gonna compare it to residential real estate, where if you have a property in a block and then a condo opens up right next to you, your property decreases in value. But I guess in that case, McDonald's would actually increase in value, so that's a benefit to them. But then let's say they have another a burger shop that's much better, that opens up next to one of their locations. Maybe that franchisee is going to stop losing. They're going to start losing money. But then again, if we go back to the MNAV part that you're talking about, if we compared, if we just made it so that MicroStrategy's returns are basically their growth in Bitcoin, their MNAV should be much higher.
Yeah. So I do have some numbers here, guys. I just Googled quickly the net asset value of McDonald's. So that would be their assets against their liabilities. It's 56 billion, and then divided by the market cap by that, which is their MNAV, which would be 3.917. So it's almost four, which is way higher than strategy. So that's the other thing they could be evaluating, right? Is if we buy Bitcoin, that's going to make us more like what strategy is doing. And yes, strategy has been a crazy success story from where they were because they adopted Bitcoin. But we currently have a higher multiple to our net asset value, which means that there's more growth baked into our stock because of what our strategy is, which is real estate and burger franchises. So it would actually kind of be a sign. It would really not be beneficial to them currently because they're only looking at, well, I don't know what metrics they're looking at, but if they were only looking at those metrics, then it would make sense for them not to adopt Bitcoin.
So there's about what strategy right now? About 2, the premium on it? 2?
Yes.
So strategy is 2 in the world that we're moving into. McDonald's is 4 in the world that we're moving away from. It's pretty clear, I think. And the last thing that I was going to mention here in terms of McDonald's and Bitcoin is that if we think about what McDonald's sells, they are a very low margin industry. They probably don't make much off of somebody walking into McDonald's. That's kind of what the whole theme of this was, is they're more of a real estate company than an actual burger company. And that's why I thought the MNAV was actually important there. If that's what we're actually measuring there, is their real estate holdings versus what the people are paying for their shares right now. But for very small margin companies like McDonald's, let's say that somebody walks in there, they expect to make about a 5% return on that customer. The one thing that McDonald's could benefit from tomorrow is implementing Bitcoin and Lightning into their payment systems, because Visa and MasterCard take about 2 or 3% of their each transaction. So every time somebody walks into McDonald's and buys a burger with a Visa card, Visa gets 2 or 3%, which cuts into a very low margin business there. If McDonald's were to implement Lightning into that, all of a sudden that 5% margin goes to like 7 or 8. They have all of a sudden less reliance on their real estate going up in value to maintain their equity. And I think that that's companies and businesses like McDonald's with very low margins should be the first to implement Lightning, just to get rid of that 2 or 3% and put it back into the shareholders.
And the crazy thing is here that they don't even need to accept Bitcoin. They could get USDT on Lightning.
Right.
And then they could immediately convert it into US dollars, right? That's huge. That's crazy. Like that could make a massive difference.
I think that adopting Bitcoin as a merchant is like the greatest way to stack Bitcoin, because if all of the small merchants, like there's 200 businesses in Vancouver, almost every single one of them never converts that Bitcoin into Canadian dollars. They just, that's their stack, and that's how they accumulate their stack, right? So if the proposal to add Bitcoin to the treasury failed for McDonald's, that doesn't mean they couldn't accept Bitcoin and just leave that in Bitcoin. And they could, you know, a small percentage of their customers would pay in Bitcoin, and they would just increase that stack just from that margin there that they would earn. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense, and these small businesses are doing it. And I think the businesses are just going to get bigger and bigger that start adopting Bitcoin. It's probably still going to be a ground up kind of grassroots thing. I don't think these large businesses are going to be the first to adopt Lightning payments, but that's great. I think small businesses benefit the most, and the early adopters benefit the most, and small businesses are the ones that I would like to see succeed because of Bitcoin.
Yes. And sorry, go ahead, Rajat.
I just had one last point. Technically right now, we're doing the same thing. We're exchanging our value for Bitcoin. We're working a job. We're creating something. We're doing whatever we can to buy Bitcoin. McDonald's already has a product that people want, and they could easily improve that product, and they can exchange it for Bitcoin. They can, I mean, it is value for value, right? People want burgers. People want food. People want to rent their locations. They want to make cash off of it. So technically they could charge, they could charge for everything in Bitcoin, right? They could charge their franchisees in Bitcoin if they really wanted to. And that like you said, Forrest, that would be a great way for them to accumulate.
Yeah, I, for one, will not be giving away any of my sats to McDonald's for their burgers. But on that note, if you made it this far, this is a little bit longer than our usual videos, but that's okay. I think we had a good chat today. So if you're watching this, if you made it this far, let us know in a decade from now, in April 2035, let us know what you think the cost of a Big Mac will be in sats. If McDonald's is still around, if they eventually adopt the Bitcoin strategy here and add some Bitcoin to their foundation, let us know what you think the one Big Mac will cost in terms of sats. I'm going to guess about 5 sats. And at that point, I'll maybe consider swapping for a Big Mac. But anyways, fellas, thanks for another great one here. Oh, sorry,
Actually,
Rajat, go ahead.
One last thing. So right now it costs 6,700 Satoshis. So just for some context here.
67 sats for a Big Mac?
6,700.
6,700. And
it'll
probably
cost 3,000 at some point. Then it'll be 2,000. It'll keep dropping. So
yeah, it'd be
Everything
interesting.
gets
We
cheaper
had that
with Bitcoin.
figure loaded from 2015, how many Bitcoin it cost for one Big Mac, but it's going to continue that direction. That's the point of this whole show here, just to spread the awareness of that. So anyways, fellas, thanks for another one. If you feel like giving some back, right beside Forrest's head there, you can easily, simply, permissionlessly send us some value in exchange for today's chat. So we'll catch you on the next one, fellas.